Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're welding a firewood rack. Now my shop is heated by a wood stove, and that means that normally I have a small pile of firewood that's sitting off to the side somewhere, and it gets in my way and I'm kicking it and I'm tripping over it and it makes a mess on the floor, etc., etc., etc. And this year, I don't want that mess on the floor. I'm tired of it. It's time to do something about that. And for that, I'm going to be welding up a small little mobile wood rack. How are we going to make it, or what are we going to make it out of? Well, it all starts with, let's have a little drawing session over at the workbench. Well, because I have a small shop, it doesn't take much to heat it up and keep it at that heat. So I don't need a massive wood rack in here because I don't really go through that much. So I've taken some dimensions, and what I want it to be is 24 inches tall, and I want it to be 12 inches wide. And lastly, I want it to be 20 inches long. Now this should house plenty of firewood for me, but I'm not going to go crazy on the design. I want something boxy, I want something simple, something easy to weld. That way, if some of you out there are just learning on welding, it'll give you something easy to do. So how am I going to make this, or what shape am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for something like this, where this will be our sides. We will have a base of the rack, just like this, and we will have an upright. How fancy is that? Now, of course, if we do a little bit of perspective, there will be a piece here that will connect a back section here, just like this. And same here, we will have some cross bracing, and the same on the other side. So I guess it doesn't really take much to do this, and it all kind of needs to start off, I guess, with the material that we're going to use, and we're going to need some 1-inch square tubing that has a wall thickness of 1/8 of an inch. Well, the first pieces that I want to cut, because they are the longest, will be these pieces right here, which will be our 24-inch uprights. And we are going to need 4 of those. So let's get out the metal chop saw and cut ourselves 4 pieces at 24 inches long. And there we have our 4 24-inch upright pieces. The next pieces that we want to cut will be our 2 lengths, or the bed of our wood rack. And for that, we're going to need 2 pieces that are going to be 20 inches long. And there are our 2 bed pieces. Now, in my drawing here, I show a brace in the middle. I'm not so sure that that's necessary right now, but the next pieces that I want to cut will be the 2 uprights here that will make our sides, one at the top, one at the bottom, and the 2 here, one at the top, one at the bottom, and as well, 1 brace in the middle. And lastly, I'm going to be adding casters to this. So I need to add another brace at each end of the bed to give me something to bolt my wheels into. So in total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces at 10 inches long. And that would be all the steel components that we need. I might add these center braces later once I see the stability of it, but considering that this is 1-inch tubing, I honestly don't think that we're going to need those middle braces. That may have been a little bit of overkill on my part. Well, now it's time to get into some of the assembly. And what we're going to need, we're going to put aside our two 20-inch bed pieces, and we're going to need 4 of our 10-inch sections and our 2 uprights. And essentially what we're going to do, I'll just show you on one of them, is we're going to, at the bottom of one of these assemblies, flush at the bottom, we are going to assemble the pieces just like this, and we're going to tack weld them together. At the top, I want to have the piece down, I'm going to say about that far. I don't even know what that is. We're going to go 3 inches down from the top. So we need to make 2 of these assemblies. But before we do that, we need to take them over to the grinder and remove all of the burring that was created when we cut them with the chop saw. And now it's time to change jobs, and by that I mean I need to change uniforms. So we need to take it from the woodworker of this to this. Guys, I see a lot of fellas welding online, and I've got to tell you, if you're not wearing a full getup of PPE to weld, you're doing it wrong and you need to stop. That includes your face shield with the proper lens for welding, safety glasses, a respirator, your welding gloves, a welding jacket, denim jeans, and work boots. It involves the whole 9 yards. I can't tell you how surprised you would be if while you were welding suddenly you felt some of the hot molten slag burning into the top of your foot because you forgot to change into your work boots and had it burn through your nylon running shoes. So guys, please, full PPE all the way when you're welding. With that being said, I'm going to get off my soapbox now and let's get both of these side panels tack welded together. And there we go. There is one end of our wood rack just tack welded together. So I'm going to make the other one now, tack weld it up, and I'll see you when I get that done. I'd just like to point out though that for ventilation in the shop, I have the window fully opened, I have the door cracked at the back with a fan running on high to circulate and suck the smoke out from welding. And it actually does a great job of circulating the air. So keep that in mind, guys, that not only do you have one of these on, but you also have ventilation in your shop to clear the smoke. And that would be both of our upright ends tack welded together. So at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to tack weld in our bottom pieces. They will be flush with the bottom and flush with both the front and the back edge. And as well, I'm going to line up for our 10-inch pieces that will allow us to bolt our casters on as well as be the center support. So let me get the main rails installed first, and then I'll show you what I have in mind for the casters. Well, when everything is said and done, what I want is to mount some of these 2-inch casters to the bottom of our wood rack. So I have the caster here, and all I'm going to do is mount 2 of our 10-inch pieces so that they're positioned in such a way that I will be able to drill and bolt them to these pieces here. I just think it'll be a better way to mount it when it's all said and done. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tack these 2 pieces in place, and in looking at this design and feeling it, I don't think I need that center support piece. So I'm not going to bother with that. So let's get these tacked in place. With the whole thing welded up, I'm now just going to let it cool for a little bit. I'm going to take an angle grinder, clean up the slag and some of the welds that went a little funky, and then we need to drill for our casters. Well, here at the bottom of the wood rack, as I said earlier, I want to mount some 2-inch caster wheels. So I want them all to be a specific spacing from the edge. So all I've done is I've made a template that mimics our wheels exactly, and I'm just going to line up this template where I want it. I'll square it off to the edge, mark our wheels, and then from there I'm going to center punch them, drill them with a number 7 tap bit, and then tap them for a 1/4 20 thread, and then we can bolt in our wheels to our frame. And there we have one done. So I don't think we need a video of it. It's the same process. I'm going to mark, drill, tap, and bolt into place our other 3 wheels. And when I get all of that finished, I'm going to come back and see it. All right, and there we go. And just like that, we have mobility for our wood rack. So I had said that I wasn't a fan of the way that it leaves all kinds of pieces of firewood all over my floor. And this isn't going to stop that because they're going to fall right through. So the next thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to take a scrap of plywood. It looks like it's going to be 3/4. I'm going to see if I have some 1/2 inches, which is what I would prefer. And I'm going to take some careful measurements, and we're going to cut a bottom for this wood rack. And we'll have to cut notches to incorporate our 1-inch by 1-inch legs. So I'm going to head over to the table saw. We're going to cut that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how it fits in. And with our piece of plywood cut, that will just sit in the bottom there like that, and hopefully prevent some of the mess anyway from falling down through onto the floor, especially while I'm wheeling it around. So I guess this is really all the metal work that is involved here. So the only thing left to do here is going to be to give this a coat of paint. So I'm going to paint it, I think I want to go red. So the first thing that I'm going to do before I paint it is I'm going to remove all of our wheels. And in place of our wheels, I'm going to place a 2-inch long 1/4 20 bolt in each one of these holes. That will do 2 things. One, it will keep the spray paint out of our threads, and two, it'll also give a standoff of about 1 inch so that when I get the bottom spray painted, I can flip it over, stand it up on the bolts, and I'm not messing up the finish on the bottom of our rack. So I don't think we need a video of me spray painting. I guess I'll see you when this thing is done and dry, and we'll move on to the next step. There's no rush here, guys. This will probably take a few days with several coats of paint. I may even hit it with some automotive spray paint primer first, just to give it a good base coat and give it something for the spray paint to adhere to. So I guess I'll see you when this thing here is a different color. Now, for all intents and purpose, our wood rack really is completed. However, there's something about when someone does a welding project and uses tubing and leaves the ends open, it just drives me crazy because it's unfinished. So what I'd like to do is make wooden plugs for that. And that's what we're going to do next, and I'm going to show you what to do. And what you need is a length of stock that is equal to the outside diameter of your tubing. So I have a piece of cherry. It is 1 by 1. The length doesn't matter, whatever you need for your end caps on these. And I have taken a 1/4 inch round over bit to all 4 corners. So we're just going to do some rough measuring. It doesn't have to be exact. That's the beauty of these things. So we're going to come down, say 1/2 inch, and then say another 1/2 inch. I'm going to keep dividing it into 1/2 inch sections. How's that? Just like this. And then once we get those marked on there, I'm just going to take a square and square them off. And then we're going to head over to the table saw. Okay, so we have our stock with our marks at every 1/2 inch, and I have just a regular table saw blade in here. It's faster with a dado blade, but I know that some of you don't have them. So what I have done is I have set the height of my blade to be 1/8 of an inch. That is equal to the thickness of the wall of steel that I'm using for my steel tubing. So I'm just going to line my blade up roughly with that first mark. I'm going to set a depth stop, or set a stop block rather, and I'm going to run this through, rotating it, and make 4 cuts, 1 on each side, to give us a little bit of, we're going to have a recess here. So let me cut this and I'll show you what I mean. And now all we're going to do is set our fence again, and we want to continue to cut them until we meet with the next 1/2 inch line. And now you want to skip a section and then cut the recess, and then skip a section and cut the recess, and skip a section and cut the recess. I drew one too many here. And that will give us 1, 2, 3, 4 plugs. So I'm going to cut all of these, continuing to set my stop block and move it along and cut each section, and I'll see you when I get that done. With all 4 of the recesses cut, I want the top of each one of these plugs to be 3/8 of an inch wide. So what I've done is I've measured from the edge of our recess here up 3/8 of an inch and placed a square mark along at each one of these. So the first thing that we need to do is line up our blade to cut the end off of this. And we're going to line up our stop so that it will cut at that line at 3/8 of an inch. So we'll just set up our stop and cut the top off of our plug stock. And now the next thing I want to do is set my stop so that I basically cut that plug off without cutting in to our next section here. And there, minus a little bit of sanding, is one plug. So I am going to now line it up and cut the next line there, 3/8 of an inch up from the recess, and then cut off in the recess, and then cut at 3/8, etc., etc. You get the point. I'm going to cut them all, and that should yield us 4 plugs for our firewood rack. And there we have our 4 plugs. So a light little sanding here of the top, and we can take them over to our fire rack and tap them into place using a rubber mallet. Now just be sure that you don't wail on them because you will split them. This is just cherry, so it's not the hardest wood in the world, but it'll definitely serve its purpose. And there you have it, a welded firewood rack. Guys, this project came from necessity, but honestly, it's fantastic. It is rock solid, made of 1-inch steel tubing, and I mean, it doesn't get any more solid than what I've made it here. The one thing I may do, I haven't decided yet, is I may drill some holes down through the base pieces so that I can screw that piece of plywood in place. I haven't really decided on that yet, only because the firewood will hold it down, and you know, if I do want to lift it out and brush it off or what have you, at least I have that option without having to mess around with screws. So it may be an option for later. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that the wooden plugs just finish it off. I can't stand that open-ended tubing. I think it just looks horrible. So for what it took to cut a few pieces and hammer them into the top ends, it just finishes it off and makes it that much more professional, that much more complete. It kind of makes it whole. Finally, like, finishes it off. It gives it that last little bit of touch. Kind of like putting a finish on a project. That's what we've done there with those end plugs. This project may not be for all of you guys. It may not even be for any of you guys, but I do want to point out something. What if you don't weld? You could bolt this thing together just as easily. You just have to readjust your design a little bit. Nothing wrong with some 1/4 bolts right through 2 pieces of steel with lock washers to hold it in tight. You could still make a solid mobile firewood rack for your shop without having to weld a single thing. Just because I weld doesn't mean that everybody does, and I fully understand that. But you know what? It's up to you what you want to do with the project. Guys, this has been a lot of fun. I haven't done some welding in a while. I really love welding. I truly enjoy the process. I honestly hope that you guys are going to try this project for yourself. And I really hope that if you're going to get any kind of welding done, guys, please, I can't say it enough, make sure you have all the proper PPE, that you're not taking any chances with welding. It's dangerous enough on its own without taking away the personal protective gear. If you haven't already, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. As I said, I've had a great time with this project. I just love welding. I love everything about it. I hope that you've enjoyed if not the project, then maybe at least the concept of it. And if not, at least hopefully you've found this show a little entertaining. Guys, I hope you're going to try this for yourself. I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and more importantly, I honestly hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.